Welcome to Innovative Ireland, the future of the retail landscape. 23 countries in the audience today. No surprise, because Ireland always attracts a lot of interest in our global convenience industry for very, very good reasons. I've got a partner in crime today as co-host, a very good friend of mine, Frank Gleeson, who's president of Aramark Northern Europe. Frank, if you could perhaps join us on the show today.
Good afternoon, Dan. Delighted to be with you from a not so sunny Dublin.
Always great to chat with you, Frank. And we've got an interesting episode. It's a good time to be looking at the Irish market, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, Dan. I think we've assembled a terrific group of retailers for our discussion today. And I've always regarded the Irish market as one of the most innovative, one of the most competitive, and certainly one of the best convenient markets in the world. And it's great to be able to share some insights with your viewers today. Maybe have a good discussion with the guys, because we've got some of the best for your viewers, and I think it's going to be a lively, interesting, and informative discussion, hopefully, as we go through it.
100%. Now, the last time we spoke, Frank, you just together with Maxwell, Aramark had just won the Global Forecourt Experience Challenge, which we put together with Mike Zaigo and the team at CAF. Hadn't you? And maybe looking back at that was a big achievement, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, it was. And I want to thank CAF and Mike and the guys, because they put together a global challenge, which is really terrific in terms of, they went out and asked everybody to step up to the plate to try and, I suppose, give everyone a view or a challenge about how the consumer might be greeted or looked after better in a challenging environment of COVID. So we were delighted to win it. I think it was really competitive, and certainly my team on the ground, Mark and Laura, were absolutely chuffed. And we're very happy with our association with Maxwell, of course. But fundamentally, it's great to be challenged, and it's great to step up to the mark and obviously win.
Absolutely. Well, I guess, this was very appropriate to look back at over the last year at some of the key operational considerations for our industry. And, that's credit to your team for doing such a good job with Maxwell there. I mean, obviously, some of these operational considerations are still, as important as ever around the world in our roadside sector. And I'm sure we'll be talking about them a bit more later in the program. However, let's get back to something that the Irish market, as you were saying, Frank, is justifiably famous for, and that's being, I guess, the global industry sees Ireland as one of the sexiest places for retail innovation globally. And if you were going to say, well, what's the sort of one of the number one stops when retailers from around the world come into the Irish market, Fresh, the good food market, is up there, isn't it?
Yeah, and listen, as a former winner of the next Convenience Store of the Year, it's got to be one that people are keeping an eye on. It's one that has been very entrepreneurial and very innovative. And, I think, competition does breed that, and we're going to hear a bit about that today. So I think you've got certainly examples of the best, very good innovation, particularly around food service, which, the industry itself globally has pivoted very strongly into food service and has become a major competitor for the fast food outlets. We really can, compete very well. We've got the innovation, we've got the expertise, and we've got great locations with a lot of footfall. So I think the industry has been pretty vibrant over here. It has been challenged through COVID with, fuel sales and perhaps some of the challenges around safety and consumers not being on the road as much. But, come at the hour, come at the challenge, come at the group and the retailers. And I think we've got some great examples that I'm really looking forward to seeing today.
Well, let's take a look, as you say, Frank, and welcome Austin McGinley. Austin, you're brand and development consultant for the Good Food market. You're a man that knows it inside out, therefore, and welcome first of all.
Thanks very much, Dan, and thanks for the kind words, Frank. Yes, I'm very much part of the furniture at Fresh, the Good Food market, having worked with Noel and the team for the past 6 years. So I'm really looking forward to sharing one of our stores today.
Well, I hope you like my description as perhaps one of the one of the number one locations that we all want to come to. Of course, we haven't been able to visit your latest store at Capital Dock. Austin. So perhaps you could show us a few images from that store, and then we'll talk through, how look wider across the business as well.
Sure. Thank you. Great introduction. So Fresh was founded in 2006 by Noel Smith. Started off with one store. Now we've grown to 7 stores, soon to add an 8th this year. And all of the stores, 5 are in the city centre in Dublin, and we've got 2 neighbourhood stores, of which I'm going to show a couple of images later. So in terms of the convenience sector, what drives the team, what drives us every day is to be a leader in our sector and to be doing a little bit better every day at what we do to serve our customers better. And a core part of the DNA is to really push this idea of what convenience retail means. And one of these great examples is the Capital Dock store, of how far we've actually pushed the boundaries of convenience. So this is the Liffey, the river that runs through Dublin, and we've got 4 stores alongside it. And in the bottom left corner of this diagram just there is our Capital Dock store. And that's what I'm going to do a tour of today. So a quick store plan. There are 2 entrances at the top of this diagram. It's the River Liffey, and on the left, in the west-hand side, we've got the main customer entrance. So once you arrive in, you're greeted by fresh produce, and you're taken along a journey that sweeps around to the left, and with lovely views over the city and the Liffey. So we're at the base of this building. It's a 22-story building of residences, and we're now down just outside the main entrance. So if we go through the doors here, we can see what the customers are greeted with. So first of all, with the name Fresh, the Good Food Market, we absolutely have to communicate and deliver that at the very first moment that a customer enters the door. So we're straight into fresh produce, such as our bakery range. And just to the right of the customers, we have our fabulous salad bar with 64 salads, and we've evolved that into including hot food at the very end, just on the left-hand side. And that, adjacent to that, is our fabulous merchandise of our fresh fruit and veg. That then leads into several meters of our innovative fresh kitchen concept, which changes food throughout the day from breakfast, and then we change into lunchtime service, and then we get set up for the evening service. In this store, we introduced some new concepts to trial, the first of which is this juice bar, juice and smoothie bar. That runs into the Fresh Cafe. And around the corner, we have a new Italian gelateria concept that we also debuted in this store. So we tried out new concepts at each new store that we go into. We try and evolve the fresh concepts so that we never stand still, and we certainly don't have a cookie approach to dropping the same fresh concept, because we like to evolve the concept and to ensure that it meets the demographics of the area. And speaking of which, given that some of the adjacent buildings have got some very high net worth individuals either staying there, living in the area, or working in the area with some of the financial institutions, we really did a very special design concept for our off license, and this is called the wine barrel. We still offer value in that wall in the front. We also put in some individual areas where we could showcase the best of Irish artisan products, and this is an example here. And then beside that, we've got Mediterranean, and beside that, we've got US goods. So it's an idea of ensuring that we have convenience across the world. We also put in 3 self-checkouts, which were working really well pre-COVID, as well as our 3 assisted checkouts at the end. This is a real example of the type of food that we serve. So again, really pushing the boundaries of what convenience retail should mean to customers in 2021. This is our pancakes for breakfast. And then a little nod to our world famous band in Dublin, U2. This was originally going to be the U2 Tower. And then over the course of time, it became taken over by the landlord, and we were invited in to take space for the retail aspect. So into our seating area, with quite a glamorous in-store dining facilities, we believe. And we also work and commission with local artists who paint our core phrase, which is so many foods for so many moods. And that's an example there. It's quite a fabulous dining experience, if I say so myself, very much like arriving into a lobby in a 5-star hotel. And again, it's an example of how we've decided to really push what it means to dine in a convenience store. And we culminate the store tour with our outdoor seating area, which we never really saw the full potential of because of the lockdown. But the idea here was that we could, local businesses could take the space and we could host events and serve food and beverages, and we could have that as an event space outside. So it's that's the full tour from the bottom of the tower through to our exterior area with all of the fresh food and merchandise and in-store dining facilities that we have in this store.
Well, huge, a good point to pause, I think, Austin. And first of all, congratulate you on how good that is. Any thoughts, Frank?
Yeah, listen, I know the store very well. We actually work with the clients next door, JP Morgan. We work with Kennedy Wilson, who have the accommodation above it. So I know this location pretty well. And my view would be this is absolutely cutting edge design in terms of layout and customization of the location to suit the demographics and the people nearby. So it's terrific from that perspective. The innovation around food, again, let's just look at the categories that Austin and the team are trying to target. Good margin categories, good repeat categories, absolutely terrific, And then the technology, the frictionless environment, bringing that in. And that is something that is here to stay. And we're seeing a lot more of that right across our business. So I love the store and I'm really familiar with it. I'm familiar with the one out in Northern Cross, which I'm a customer of myself. So the guys are doing a great job of pushing the bar up for us. And, we compete with them because we like to compete, but, this is as good as it gets in my mind.
Well, I think, echo that, Frank. Austin, just thinking about your other stores. Now, obviously, we wanted to focus on Capital Dock initially, but there's also a story to be told elsewhere across your other portfolio of stores, isn't there, in the neighborhoods? And I think it's an interesting one. So let me ask you about that.
Sure. I marked of our store list, the two in green are our two neighborhood stores where during the lockdown, we've seen some terrific growth in those stores. We refurbished both in 2020. So I would like to show you how we've taken the essence of the fresh concept and made it work in a neighbourhood store. So if we have a look at our Step Aside store, which is a neighbourhood store in South Dublin. So this is very much in an area surrounded by apartments and houses. So we have adapted our concept to make it much more family friendly. And we've got a fantastic products in here from our donuts, as well as products from the Coca-Cola company and our fresh cafe concept. This is a busy store. There's a gym beside it. Lots of families who would do a full grocery shop in this store. So we adapted the merchandise mix and the in-store concepts to suit the area. And that's another theme that we have across the group to ensure that the customer offer is relevant for the neighborhood where the store sits. That's why Capital Dock, as Frank was saying, is in a fairly salubrious location in Dublin, and therefore the design concept and the customer experience is fitting of that. And whereas when we move out into the suburbs, there's no point taking a Capital Dock experience and dropping it there and hoping that it works. So what we did was Noel and the team worked together to ensure that the offer is right for the customers that we serve there. So Northern Cross store that Frank also referred to is quite close to Dublin Airport. It's a large 12,000 square foot store, again for a full grocery shop, not just convenience retail. This was refurbished last year. And in this one, we had a different approach to the off-license. We also put in new shop-in-shop concepts, which I'll show you. And we also moved into more of non-food, which is not traditionally where fresh sits with our expertise. So you can see how our fabulous salad bar has had to transition into products that are pre-packaged, and that's just the nature of the industry at the moment. And hopefully we'll get back to a time when we can be showcasing the fresh food in the best capacity. This is one of our shop-in-shop concepts, which we invited Kerrigan's Butchers, which is a family chain of butchers, and we invited them into the store. And this makes sense because, again, it's a neighborhood store, and this is a busy butchery department for the store. And the next slide shows you how we've tried to keep the good food market, keep true to our values and the sub-brands that we have within the business. So we launched then the gift market, and that was to enable customers to not have to travel into town, into the city centre to buy non-food items, to buy birthday presents, balloons and teddies and birthday cards, etc., and some stationery for the home office. So that all sits within this new department, the gift market. So as we open up new stores, we're looking at our stable of brands and concepts, and we can play with them to see what can work depending on the neighborhood that we go to next.
Very good, Austin. Now, a good question's come in, and I'm going to put it to yourself, Austin, and also Frank, from Scott Annan. And I quote, "I rate the island of Ireland alongside Japan as the top two global sea retail fresh food for today markets. So as good as Japan, which is, of course, fabulous. How has Ireland, with its small population, achieved this leading position?" And I think that nails it. I think that's a good question to ask you, Austin. And then, Frank, you could take it as well, if you don't mind.
I think it's a great question, and it's one that's asked a lot. How are you guys doing this so well? And I think there's a number of factors in my view. I think there are a number of fantastic retailers who are very innovative, that aren't afraid to take risks on this island. And that's how they have developed such fantastic concepts right across north and south of Ireland. So I think it's that attitude to take risks. We've also got a young workforce that are keen, they travel, they bring back new ideas, they're interested in world cuisine and different food trends. And that is something that also our convenience retailers are very good at picking up on and introducing it quickly into the store. So those would be my two areas, the people and also the population. Very good. Frank?
Yeah, so listen, I would agree with Scott, and Scott would know because he's a seasoned veteran of our industry. So, from my perspective, I think it comes down to, it's been a journey, Dan. So it's probably a 25, 30-year journey where we started with, trying to replicate the States, and that was quite deliberate. And then we've evolved through competition and entrepreneurial competition where the likes of Joe and Leo, I can just name so many entrepreneurs that have driven their business forward in the convenience space, so much so that it competes very strongly against supermarkets. So we have a larger share of the wallet of customers because we are giving them experiences and solutions for the occasions that they want. And that's quite important because, you heard Austin talk about he's tailoring the concepts to the locality and the occasions. And, the butchery one is an example that we've seen the high street butchers come and go to a large extent, but now they're starting to pop back up in convenient locations, a shop within a shop. And I know that absolutely is a solution that works. We do it ourselves in our own business.
Now, Frank, very good. Now, Frank, you're not one to hide your light under a bushel, if I can use that expression. And obviously, we've seen some of the great work that you've done at Aramark with Maxwell earlier on. But thinking about, a nice segue from what Austin's been showing us, maybe you can tell us a little bit about what you've been up to with Avoca, because I know you're extremely passionate about it and you've had a lot of success. So we should just focus on that for a couple of minutes.
So I won't take the credit because it's the team that does the work. You just got to get the right people around you is the most important message. But yeah, the Avoca team has been working pretty hard because traditionally our business is kind of a third non-food retail, a bit like Anthropologie you'd see globally. A third of it then would be restaurants and cafes, which pretty much have been closed. So 2/3 of the business has been shut for a prolonged period last year. So what we've done is we've dialed up the food hall experience and the food for now, food for later. And, with a twist on it's typically restaurant quality food or premium food. And what we found is it's been hugely successful. We've seen a massive growth in the sales, so much so that in some stores, and this is Ballsbridge, which is in a pretty affluent area, we've seen the sales go to 50% of the revenue that we would ordinarily have, which is way way above what it had been trading previously. So definitely the COVID and the lockdown has brought different consumers demand, and we've pivoted in terms of providing those solutions and benefited from the demand, really, as I would think about it. So fresh fruit and vegetables, fresh bread, pizza, to go. The wine category has grown quite nicely, and then the butchery category, of which we actually have worked with a previous butcher, so it was Whelan's. Now we've got our own Avoca butcher where we're actually doing it ourselves, and I think that gives us the wholesale and the retail margin. But you've got to have the craft and the expertise, and that doesn't happen overnight, and it's not easy to replicate. So what I'd say is, we've been building expertise, but more importantly, the consumers have kind of had a different need, and we've stepped really into that quite hard. And I'm pretty proud of the job the team has done in Avoca, and we're pretty excited about the future.
Well, you should be. Credit to what your team have done. And look, Austin, credit to what you guys have done with Fresh, the Good Food Market. As I say, you're always top of the list, or at the top of the list. I have to be careful what I say, don't I? For a visit. I'm sure NACS have got an eye on that outdoor space of yours. They'll have got interested around that. But look, just wanted to thank you for joining us on the program today. We only had a short segment, but I think you nailed it and really did yourself proud in terms of what you've done. So congratulations and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks, Austin. Well, so Frank, let's think about the panel segment next. We've got an exciting discussion and some big hitters, haven't we?
We do, and it's going to be hard to keep these two guys quiet for sure. So I expect a lot of perspective, and I think we've got a lot of experience on the video today.
Well, let's get into it. So if we can invite Joe Barrett, Chief Operating Officer at Applegreen, to join us, and David Bagnell, who's Director at BWG, to join us as well. Obviously, Spar Island. David, Joe, welcome.
Thanks very much, Dan. Thanks, Frank. Good to see you, Dave.
Yeah, hi, Joe.
So some interesting stuff, guys, just before we get into your businesses from Austin, and also looking at a few things that Frank's been up to.
Yeah, I thought it was fantastic. I think Fresh has always been sort of to the forefront of developments, and it's great to see what they're doing in Capital Dock. And it was interesting when we were at a very early stage in our development, we felt there was a very much what I would call ultra convenience, where there's a market for customers who don't want the grocery shopping. And I think the Spar brand has evolved into that. You see Avoca, you see Fresh. And I think what we saw there in Capital Dock was really, really high end. And I think that's what customers are looking for. They're looking for that high end experience. And to answer, or to add a couple of points to the answer for Scott and Anne, I felt one of the things, the Irish people culturally are really open to trying new things. And we find it's interesting when you go across the likes of the UK and the States, they like brands and they're very traditional and they kind of stick to brands. Whereas I think the Irish customer is very much open to trying out new things. And I also think because of the young population that was referred to, and there's fairly close to full employment, they're open with kind of with higher disposable income. They're willing to kind of get out there and try new things. And I think that's part of it, and that success breeds success. Then if it works, we'll keep innovating as retailers.
You do. Would you agree with that, David?
Yeah, 100%. And congratulations to Austin, Noel, and the team. Yeah. Their stores are absolutely world class. And particularly when you look at it from a city or an urban centre piece, we've some of the largest companies in the world, tech companies, very highly educated consumers who have travelled. We're also competing with the likes of their canteens, who in a lot of cases are heavily subsidised. So what we're trying to do is offer an experience and a high quality food offering and food service. But on the other side, you have the commercial balance, because we are also competing against high rents and high cost to trade. So we need to ensure that we actually drive that food service element in our business to make the commercials actually work. But and it's great. Look, we all compete on a day-to-day, but when you're raising the bar of those standards within those stores, it's only good for our industry and our industry reputation. So it's brilliant.
I think, Dave, that's another good point. But I think because it's a relatively small economy, but we all compete against each other, and you raise the bar. You definitely want to go out and see, can you beat Dave? Can you beat Frank? Can you beat Austin and Noel? And that's the way you're always looking at each other. You're saying, how can we up our game? And I think that, again, is something we do really well. So I think it's that group of companies investing heavily and working on it. Centra would be another brand well worth, a huge innovator in the Irish market too. And they all work hard to kind of raise the bar and raise the standards. And I think from that, we all do well, and the customer benefits greatly from it.
Yeah, I think you're both completely right. I mean, I think we are, as an industry, convenience industry, competing against supermarkets and fast food and the share of wallet. And I think the industry has been really good at kind of lifting the elbows and finding those new categories or occasions and investing. I think the investment has been terrific, in terms of not just innovation, but we've put some serious service together and technology. I love the technology, I'm saying.
Right, guys. So we should move on with our themes. Just think about some of the sort of big topics that are challenges and opportunities for our industry in both in the Irish market and obviously in many other global markets. Let's think about new consumer behaviours in terms of the changes and also the opportunities there. And David, I don't know whether we could ask you, just to tell us what's happened, in the Irish market around the changes around the consumer.
Yeah, well, look, for us and in our experience, it's kind of an evolution of customer behaviours. And the main reason for this evolution, Dan, is the fact that our customers actually displaced. They're normally in their office, but they're now not. We've seen the impact of COVID in our cities and our urban centres, and that has been profound. I'll give you the example, and we're talking about Dublin. Like, Dublin city footfall is currently down 70%. Our office occupation is down 90%, and our tourists are down 97%. So our displaced customers are now working, living, studying, but socialising all at home. So within our stores, we needed to actually evolve our retail offering, especially around the fresh and the ambient range, to meet that requirement. As you know, BWG have about 1,100 stores across 5 brands. Most people will be familiar with our Spar, Eurospar brand, but we also have Londis, Mace and XLs. And thankfully, Dan, we've done a brand strategy across all of those. And as Austin said earlier, our retail store profiles are shaped not by their locations, but actually by our customer habits and their actual requirements. And what we've done is we've clearly identified 4 profiles. And interestingly, during COVID, our entrepreneurial retailers had to very quickly evolve their offering for that displaced customer in their local stores and tailor it, particularly around the actual range and the shopping experience. And what is quite interesting is that in some cases, our retailers actually change their profile because they change a mix within their stores. So we've seen huge growth in promotions, alcohol and tobacco. Now, tobacco was quite interesting because if you don't travel, we've no duty free. And also there's a lack of illicit and illegal cigarettes coming into the market, which has driven up tobacco. So as the guys spoke about earlier, huge growth in casual dining, home baking. So our convenience stores really had to look at their range. Fruit and veg grew by 18%. Our customers wanted healthier, but they also wanted indulgence. So because they're living, working, and actually consuming at home, we needed to create all these different types of experiences. The movie night in, the come dine with me experience, the game nights, and obviously the rows after the game nights. And these became really critical in growing our sales and actually staying relevant. So summing up, the changes of a customer behavior gives our retailers an incredible opportunity to actually attract new business, kind of a stickiness piece, but also hold on to the big increase in customer spend that we've experienced.
Very good, David. Just to give a bit of visual sort of reference, let's just quickly show a few images of recent store work that you've done with the Spar brand in the Irish market. And again, let's just go through those pictures quite quickly, just to give everybody who's watching an idea of some of the work that you and your retailers have done, which is excellent, I think.
Yeah, like as we said, we've a number of brands. Our new Mace brand concept, fabulous, off license. Our new deli within the Mace brand. This is our new Eurospar image, look and feel, which is our large store format. Trading very well, huge growth now during COVID, particularly about the fresh side of the business. You'll be very familiar with these stores in Millennium Walk and Marion Row, which is a brand new Spar concept. Again, we call these lifestyle stores. So these are very, very high food service and impulse, in excess of 50% of their business.
Very, very good. Well, some lovely images as ever from you guys. Now, Joe, I mean, thinking about some of the reactions David had to changes. I mean, how would Applegreen view it? Thinking about the Irish market first, perhaps.
Yeah, I said we would split the business into kind of two different areas, I would say, Dan. The first is our local convenience stores, and the second then is our more travel type locations. And the COVID impacted the travel locations much more so than they did the locals. And similar to what Austin and David were saying, as our local stores, our sales went up, they performed extremely well. We very much provided the needs of the local customers. So people working at home came out to get a water, a coffee, that type of idea. The first lockdown was during, it went into the spring season. So we sold an awful lot of outdoor plants, which is a whole new area for us, a lot of logs and sticks and things like that for the outdoor fires and entertainment. So we evolved our brand and our offer to suit the customer need. And I would say a huge hats off to our internal design and marketing teams. We spent a lot of time on just the customer experience, the ambience of the store, and design. And I think that has worked really well for us, and just trying to improve things. One example would have been, we had a huge success with our 24/7 birthday party, and we had queues down the road for nearly a mile, and it just creates a bit of buzz within the team of people, which was great. So on the flip side of that, our motorway locations were significantly impacted. Traffic was down as high as 90% at the worst of the times, but it's now back to about minus 50% or so. So we're trying to adapt the offer, and you have to kind of cut your costs and adapt your offers and keep certain offers closed, others open. At this stage, I'd certainly say a huge thank you to the government for the support. We got things like rate subsidies, we got employment subsidies across all the markets that we operate in. And I think that was really, really helpful to retail. And again, we're seen as an essential service. There's a lot of other retailers who are currently still closed, which is very difficult for them. So I think we're, call it the lucky ones to be open. But I think what we've tried to do is to play to our luck and to adapt our offers and to grow the business. Other things we would have found, Dan, was a huge increase in growth in drive-throughs. So I think the customer, if you go back for those who are from abroad who don't fully realise, we're still in full lockdown in Ireland. During the periods like this, people have to queue up to go into the big multiple grocery stores. Customers came into our smaller type convenience stores because there were shorter queues and they felt they could get in and get out quicker. So things like our drive-throughs went really well because customers didn't even want to get into the store. Things like click and collect went well. We also then installed kiosk units so customers could pay for and select their own products before they went up to the counter. So in the likes of our Burger Kings in the UK or KFCs and those, and that again went really well. So the adoption rates of those went through the roof, and we do think those that's here to stay now. We don't think customers are going to flip back to as much counter service as there was heretofore. Another thing we found was a huge change towards how people paid for things. There was a massive fall off in cash. It's basically down to sort of it's mostly younger children, predominantly who don't have cards, but everyone else is paying either on their phone or with their tap and go type ideas. So there has been a huge change with how people pay for things. So overall, I would say we've adapted to the kind of the new normal, Dan. We've pushed our food to go, we've pushed our coffee. We've did a lot of work on indulgence, similar to what David was talking about. So that whole experience, indulgence, went really well. So people are being good at the start of the day, and then they want a little treat for the afternoon or the evening time. And it's because we're able to provide that in the local communities that went well. So overall, it's been a relatively okay experience for us. Would you like a little bit of insight into the other markets we operate in?
We would. Maybe we could just, Frank, I'll let you in a minute for the next theme, but maybe we could just pull in some of the images from the Irish market of latest sites that you've done, Joe, and also a few US ones, which I think obviously we got quite a few US people on the audience today.
So that's one of our sites in Dundalk, which is a new Burger King drive-through. We put in our own coffee offer called Brayburn on the inside, so we're very, very pleased with that. That's Spalding, one of our sites in the UK. So you can see an Applegreen branded business, Costa drive-through, and Greg's and Subway inside. So that's interesting. We were saying there about Irish people are very much willing to try new brands and new offers. We find the UK and the US customer are particularly like branded offers, brands they know and that they will stick to. So we have found putting those brands in works well. This is a site of ours up in Barrington in New Hampshire, which is north of Massachusetts, and it's a Burger King drive-through, a truck park. This is a site in Sturbridge, which is just south of Massachusetts, coming up from Connecticut, and it's a kind of roadside location. So you see a Burger King drive-through, it's a Dunkin' in-store, and our own Applegreen shop inside. So we're pleased with how all those are operating for us.
Fascinating, Joe. Yeah. I mean, any sort of wider comments on before we go to the next theme on the Applegreen business outside of Ireland, and perhaps looking at the US and the UK?
Yeah, I would say one of the big things we had worked on over the last 2 years is our core values and just about our vision statements. And we kind of felt it's one things we had picked up. Each market is slightly different, and you can't, as Austin said earlier on, cookie cut a kind of a brand and bring it across to different markets. You have to adapt. And the one thing we said that needs to be really core to us was our values. So we did a lot of work on that, and that's been really beneficial during the lockdown, so that we have an agreed vision, we have our values, and they're all adaptable across to each of the markets. And I think that has been very, very helpful to have the full engagement of our colleagues. In terms of what's worked in the UK, our local petrol filling stations have been a huge success. They've done very well, similar to what we spoke about earlier on in Ireland. They've been very much a local stores, and because people weren't importing cigarettes from the likes of holidays in Spain and the likes, we did well there. Our motorway sites were effectively as good as locked down and closed for quite a bit of time. But when they did open up, it's the drive-throughs and the kiosk units have gone very well. So it's worth saying as well, the level of kind of how people are coming out of the crisis is different. So while in Ireland we're still in level 5 lockdown, it'll be another month before we have any sort of release. In the UK, just last week, there was a slight opening up of the country. Over 50% of the adult population have now been vaccinated. By June, they'll have 100% of the population. And you can definitely see, like last week alone, there was an 11% improvement in our sales figures in the UK versus the previous week, just because of there's an improvement in customer perceptions and attitudes, plus then the reduction in the lockdowns.
Makes sense.
Yeah, in the States, I would say it's a kind of, I call it a tale of two halves. In the Northeast and the Midwest where we operate, it's very much similar to the UK and Europe, where lockdowns and wearing face masks and hand sanitizers are very much core to our operations. Whereas down further south in South Carolina and Florida, it's what I might call Trump country. So there's a lot, kind of a lockdown there means you can still use the drive-throughs, but there's only one or two type of locations closed, but the vast majority of retail is still open. So we've traded well in those markets. And it's interesting when you look at it, in Ireland and the UK, we got a lot of support directly for our staff to help us operate our businesses. Whereas in the US, there's cash going straight into people's bank account. And a kind of a negative for us is that you might have heard recently, most people are getting $1,400 into the bank account, but it turns out then that a lot of people don't turn up to work. So is trying to get staff to operate in your locations is our biggest issue in the States during times like that.
Makes sense.
I've got a great pivot for you, Dan, just as we kind of think about the future of work, right? So, for Joe and David, kind of with different lenses, perhaps, how do you think, or how are you feeling about the work habits of people, both in terms of urban locations or let's call it cities, versus the commuting? What are you thinking about in terms of the next 6, 12, 24 months in your respective business? Maybe start with you, Joe, and go to David.
Yeah, we would definitely think, Frank, things are here to have changed, and I think they'll always stay there. I think you'll find certainly people will stay at home 1 or 2 days a week, and then they'll still come into the office a few days a week. People need to interact with other staff, and I think if you think about bringing in new staff into organizations, they need to come into an office environment to meet people and just to know things. So we think there's a change definitely that's there to stay. So city centres, I think, will have by far the biggest impact. Railway stations, that type of idea, they'll be impacted. I think our motorway sites, we still think there'll be a lot of activity and a lot of people still driving, because you can see even now people who have to work and are using their vehicles for necessary labour are still out and travelling. So we still think that side of the business will be okay. But city centre type locations near office blocks, and those kind of locations, I think, will be most impacted.
There's a lot of risk around that, Joe. I think, as governments would think about their city centres, you could lose a lot of the retailers, and there will be less activity, which will change the ecosystem fundamentally. And maybe that's a good one for you to pick up, David. Yeah.
Well, look, Frank, if you look at the kind of the future of work in general, the workplace that we return to is unlikely to be the same that the one that we actually left. And I think we have to remember that the future of our workplace was evolving anyway. And in my own view, COVID only accelerated these paces of change. Now, I have to say, on a personal basis, I'm really looking forward to returning back to the office and returning back to the new normal, whatever that may look like. Now, both Frank and Joe know Shirley, my lovely wife. Now, she is delighted I'll be returning to work. And my 2 children and my 2 dogs, who are now very fit, will be only delighted that I return back to work. But I do recognize that most businesses will probably have to adapt to more of a kind of a hybrid model. That said, I do expect a significant migration back to our cities, business parks, and urban centres as the pandemic does ease. And CBRE kind of has an interesting report out now, which clearly states that the actual physical office will continue to be required into the future, but it will be a balance between office and working from home, and working from a kind of a new third place, likes of the regional office hubs and local hotspots, etc. And I see this as a really good opportunity for us within convenience. But also I see it as a really good opportunity for food service, and Joe, for the future of mobility retailing, particularly around the sit-down areas. And as both you and Joe know, being honorary Irishmen, and Austin, to be fair, the government has just announced a really good plan to leverage some of the displacement trends caused by the pandemic and actually to rejuvenate rural Ireland. And that is very important because our cities will kind of look after their own business. And they're talking about repurposing of closed pubs as remote working hubs for the likes of public sector and workers. And that's quite interesting. Now, in saying all of that, we have to remember Ireland is in need of continued investment in our broadband infrastructure because the reality is it is not good enough. I think we need to invest in collaborative technologies, and this is going to be hugely important to enable our staff to work in this new world. And I think around cybersecurity, and I'd see that as a concern, but also a risk into the future. But, you know, Austin and I were just talking about this at the beginning. You know, Ireland has done very well, particularly in the office market, and particularly because of Brexit. And we experienced huge growth in that type of market. And we haven't experienced that population come into those offices yet because of lockdown. So we will. So to me, the future of work is probably more evolution, Joe, than probably revolution.
The other thing to add to that, David, I'd say as well, and Frank, I think customers have changed now. They're much more willing to order online, to get deliveries, click and collect, all that sort of stuff, whether it's to the office or to home. So I think that whole area of food service has changed, and the old days of going out to the larger retail units and then sort of scratch baking or making things at home. I know if it's anything like my house, there's orders coming in nearly every day for food and that type of thing. And I think that's another trend that's here to stay. Yeah. And I think we're ideally placed to be able to solve that. And the other thing I would say about the change in sort of customer habits is that our locations generally can provide a number of different offers, where it's coffee, pastries, grocery, our impulse food and grab and go food. Whereas if you're a standalone location, I think it's going to be more difficult when there's less customers in the city centres and the out of town sort of kind of office parks. So I think we're better placed to be able to survive. If you've just got a coffee shop and pastries, I think it'll be difficult. If you lose 10, 20% of your volume, I think it'll be more difficult. Whereas I think they're more likely to be able to come into some of the brands from Fresh to Avoca to Spars and ourselves. I think we're better placed.
I think that's a great point, Joe. I mean, if you think about it, you know, our locations typically would offer multiple services for multiple times a day. Yeah. So we will potentially take some of those single site operator type things and just amalgamate them in. And I think that's a consolidation role that we play for sure. Yeah. Okay. Dan, do you want to kind of move the conversation on?
Yeah. We've had a couple of questions. I can just quickly throw them in. Nigel Scully asked a good one, really, which is about, is the plastic going to stay on the Fresh product or is it going to go? You know, how much of that is going to stick? So any quick thoughts on that from anybody?
I'll go first if you don't mind. So single-use plastics are not good news. So people want them out of the business. We've actually taken them out of one of our client sites completely. And, you know, that was a big step forward. But I think the ESG agenda is here to stay. So if you can take it out and come up with a sustainable solution would be my advice.
Lots of nodding on that one. So let's move on. The other interesting question from Chanda Kumar was on what Chanda calls hyper demographics. And I think this is really relating to what Austin was talking about, with a huge degree of tailoring, quite dramatic differences between some of those stores. Make sense to you guys? Anybody?
Yeah.
You go,
Dan. I'll take that. Yes. Look, clearly, even with the size of our Spar business, we clearly identify that. And that's why we looked and created 4 profiles. So even though you trade within the one brand, at the end of the day, you're designing your store around your customer requirements and their demographics. So the reality is, and Austin picked up on this really well, you know, we're very good at the tailoring of our business around the customer, not its location. And Joe has done that in his sites also. So yeah, look, it's very important to be able to do that. Even with the size of a global brand that we have, we can do that, create its own individuality.
Joe?
Yeah, no, it's all about customer needs at the time of day, and you could be the same sort of same customer, but you have different needs at different types of the day. I haven't heard the terminology of the hyper customer like that before, but I do think we serve the needs for different people at different times of the day. I often talk about it at a coffee time. So sometimes first thing in the morning, I'm in and out and I would just want a quick grab and go coffee. Other times I'm looking for a relax and you can share a muffin and you have a chat with somebody and you're sitting down. So, and you've different needs at different times of the day for the same product. And I think with their environment and what the likes of Austin showed earlier on with some of his pictures, that's what it is. You're creating different locations for different customers at different times of the day of what they need.
Very, very good. Frank?
Yeah, listen, I think I'd agree with the guys. It's adaptation, evolution for sure. It might be faster than we've had the last 20 years. So it could go multiple times 10. So just be ready for the roller coaster would be my advice.
Yeah, the one thing I would add to that is the whole area of the experience, the environment, the ambience. I think that's where the investment needs to be, because a lot of customers now are working at home and you're kind of fed up at home. You want to go out for a walk and you want a different experience. And I think if it's going to be drab environment, customers will be less likely to go in there. They want a nice place to come and visit and to see ourselves as being part of the community and a destination in the community. I think will be important.
Last soundbite from everybody, if we could go around with you first, David, and then Joe, and then Frank. We're looking quite robust, are we, as a convenience and roadside retail industry going forward, David?
Yeah, look, I suppose, if we look at the future of the convenience business, we're massively positive about it. We continue to invest in it. We continue to acquire new stores, even in the city and the urban centres. We continue to invest with our retailers in the development of the stores and the brands. We've just announced a 25 million sustainability investment program, and that's hugely exciting. And as you know, we continue to invest in innovation and technology, and Ireland and the convenience stores in Ireland are absolutely famous about it. From a BWG perspective, but from an economist and an economy perspective, look, IBEC and the ESRI are all forecasting modest growth. Central Bank came out this morning and stated that we'll have over 5% growth for next year. So that's really positive. Concerned about the unemployment rates. I'm concerned about footfall in the city centre, but this will recover, and it will recover, and Frank and Joe touched upon this earlier, around the government supports. And we as an industry, no matter who you are or what brand you are, you need to shout very loud to government and representative bodies on behalf of our retailers for these supports. And at the end of the day, look, our government will give us support. We're very pro-business. We have a highly educated workforce. Thankfully, money is cheap at the moment. We have a big infrastructural investment program. So builders are really good for our business. So yeah, look, it's very exciting.
Very positive. Joe, quick soundbite from you on robustness.
Yeah, I think we're hugely robust. And I think one addition I'd add to it is we didn't get to speak about electric vehicles. I think the whole ESG is here to stay. I think electric, our own opinion is that the adoption of electric vehicles is sort of has increased by about 10 years, and what had been perceived as being the adoption rate, I think they'll be here to stay. I think when customers need to charge up, it'll give them time then to be able to get a coffee and a pastry while they're charging up. So I think that will be a big benefit to us. So we're hugely positive about it. People like stopping at well-run, well-managed, well-branded facilities, and I think we're in a very good place to benefit. And to me, it's all about team. It's all about people. I think you can invest all the money you want in capital, but the issue really is it's the delivery of the service. So for any of my team who are listening, a huge thank you and a hats off. They all worked incredibly hard during the COVID crisis, looking after all our customers. And as I said earlier, from our HR teams to our design and our marketing teams, we've done a lot of work on the ambience and the people and the core values. And I think that's going to win right through to for the next 10 to 20 years.
Well, Frank, it just remains for us to thank and congratulate Joe and the team behind Joe at Applegreen, and David and your team as well, doesn't it, Frank? And closing statement from you, Frank?
Yeah, listen, it's great to be with you, number one. So we're all healthy, which is terrific. I think we feel good about the economic environment in Ireland. We felt very optimistic about the future of convenience retailing. And we will do what we always do, which is innovate and put the business of today out of business tomorrow. So we are the last one standing, Dan.
Absolutely. I can't add to that other than to agree with you, Frank. My voice is going. Thank you very much for joining us and for co-hosting today, Frank, and obviously Joe and David Austin earlier on. Well, that was going to be billed as an exciting discussion, and it proved it, didn't it, guys? Thanks very much. Let me just see you again soon.
Guys. Thank you.
See you again soon. Thank you.
All.
Well, let me just down for 2 seconds just to tell you what's coming up next week after the Easter break. The Shop Talk Live is heading to the USA, our next stop on Shop Talk Live World Tour. And we've got some very interesting guests looking at the US market. The subject, redefining US convenience in a digital age. So we're going to see some interesting innovation from a couple of very interesting players. I'll be assisted as co-host by Bob Stein, who's chairman of the board at Liquid Barcodes and has a number of other interesting roles in the US market. We'll be finding out about those next week. And Sarab Swarup from Liquid Barcodes, general manager for North America, will be making a presentation on what they're doing about loyalty. The two big retailer guests who are doing some fabulous things, I have to tell you, you'll find it fascinating. Mike Fogarty, who's founder and CEO at Choice Market out of Colorado. And Kevin Smart, who not only is CEO at QuickCheck, who are going through a very exciting, I think, rebrand to TXB. We are Texas born. Great move, I think. Kevin's also NACS chairman, so has a fascinating perspective on all the stuff that's been going on from NACS's point of view. And also for a Texas retailer, it's been, let's say it's been a stormy few months. Looking forward to that next week. Thanks very much for watching. What a great episode. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.